Hey, you guys. Happy Monday. Oh my God, it's another week. Happy Monday, you guys. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Tam. I am the founder of Life After Divorce, which is a movement helping women and men who are experiencing divorce, contemplating divorce, or even living life after divorce. I want to lock arms with you. I want to share with you that there is life after divorce. I want to share with you that you can live loud. I want to share with you that you can be happy, healthy, and healed again, right? And so everything that I do on my platform is all about that. I think about my movement like kind of like McDonald's, right? So you have McDonald's menu, and maybe someone like fries, but they don't like their cheeseburger. Maybe someone like their Big Macs, but they don't like their shakes, right? So you go there for what it is that you need. So on my menu with Life After Divorce, there's quite a few things that we do, right? But the base thing that we talk about is living life after divorce. And so I just want to be another tool because everything you need is in you or right at your fingertips. So even platforms like this, where I bring people on to talk about whatever it is after divorce, it's a tool. I want you to use these tools, put them in your toolbox, and pull them out as needed. Use them in the right places because oftentimes we'll have the tool, but we're using it in the wrong place. We'll have the keys, but we're opening or trying to open the wrong doors with. And so I just want us to be very specific. I want us to be I want us to be wise with the tools that we have been given or we're gifted and use them in the right way. But tonight I have a special guest. My buddy old pal. His name is Mr. Obbie West. I am going to bring him in and allow him to introduce himself. We're going to dig into this, into this topic, talking about living versus existing after divorce. And we're going to be very authentic, just real, genuine, right? And we'll go from there. So I'm going to bring him in, you guys. Give me a second. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm blessed. I appreciate you allowing me to be on your platform, trusting me
Yeah,
with your audience.
absolutely. I thank you for your yes. I know I attempted to get you here in Cali so that you can be at the actual conference, but it was a conflict with your schedule. And so this was the next best thing for me right now. Maybe somewhere down the line, I can book you a little sooner and get you on. But right now, I definitely wanted to tap in with you, lock arms with you, and because I rocks with you. I enjoyed what I heard so far. So you guys, I met him at a girlfriend, my friend and her husband, their 10-year wedding anniversary a few weeks back. And Obi did spoken word. And when I say that every jaw was dropped, I mean, he was amazing. He really touched on some things that were true, that were real. You can tell it was just authentic. It's what he felt, what he believed, right? It wasn't, I'm sure he wrote it out, but it didn't sound like something that he just prepared just for the sake of, they want me to come and do it. I felt like he believed it. And I think anytime we do something, if it's purpose, if it's your mission, if it's your vision, the passion that comes from it should feel very authentic. And so that is what I received, or we all received. And I know I can speak for everyone that was in the room. That's what we received from you. So I say thank you for coming on my platform to just be a part of what it is that I share about life after divorce. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell the people who you are and whatever you want to share, anything you have coming up, please share that.
Okay. Again, thank you. My name is Obbie West. As aforementioned, I'm a spoken word artist, and I'm an advocate for sexual assault and abuse reduction. So I am an advocate for abuse reduction. I go around and talk to organizations who have a mandatory requirement to address that topic and facilitate trainings on that topic. Outside of those two things, the only other thing that I am every day of the week is a father. So those are the three things that I am. I'm a father, I'm a spoken word artist, and I'm an advocate.
Love it. Love it. You also do something else that I've been noticing,
What's that?
the plants.
Oh yeah. That's become a new form of therapy. That's fairly new for me. That's been within the last year. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
prior
love
to that,
it.
I was oblivious to any type of plant care. So it's very therapeutic.
Love it. Yeah, no, I noticed. And I'm not into it. However, listening to how you express, explain, how you speak to them, how, it's just, I don't know, you pull me in. And not that I'm interested in starting anything of that nature. However, it's
Mhm.
very interesting. So, even thank you for even putting your spoken word in that as well. So I can tell that it's just who you are. It's, sometimes we are something outside of the time we are hired to do it or the time we are asked to do it.
Right.
It seems like this is just who you are. Spoken word, the way you speak, the way that you deliver, the way you break things down, the understanding of whatever it is you're speaking about. So powerful. So,
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess we can jump on in with this topic, living versus existing after divorce. So I'll ask you first and foremost, have you been divorced before?
Yes. 2019.
2019. Okay. So, and not that even if you had not been divorced, and I know we did speak about it, so I knew that, but just for the sake of the audience, um, I still would have wanted to get your take on living versus existing.
Right.
But since we're talking about living versus existing after divorce, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I know for me, when I sent you the topic, I found myself going back to some old journals that I would write in while I was going through the process of divorce. And I found that it's so funny how you can read something that you wrote in a season when you were in a season and just chuckle, just laugh because you either see the growth or you see, whoo, yeah, you're still there. You may be stuck. There's some work that you have to do. So for
Right.
me, in going back and looking at my old journal, I found that a lot of my quote unquote healing time or healing journey, I was just existing. And I say that because the things that I read, I found that I was emotionally detached. I found that I was just going through the motions many times. I found that I was suppressing a lot of my feelings. So, in essence, just coping in an unhealthy way, right? I believe that because I had this title of leadership, I gave myself permission to do what the people expected me to do and not genuinely do what Tam needed to do to heal the inside out. I think about how we go to a doctor and we are given medication and they tell us to take these pills for 7 days, 2 times a day. And as soon as we begin to feel a little better, we may stop taking the medication that was prescribed to us. I learned that in my going to therapy, speaking with pastors, friends, or whoever I was trusting with that information, once I felt good, I let go, right? So I found myself, as I read my journal, starting over multiple times with my healing process. It wasn't until I really had a very bad experience um, with another person that I dated after being divorced, that I learned that you really don't know if you're healed or not until you're put in position to respond healed or not. So
Mhm.
I was responding unhealed when I dated the first guy after my divorce. And what I learned is that I did not know how to be a girlfriend, right? So I left I got divorced, and I was a wife again to someone who was not my husband because I didn't know for 20 years. That's all I knew. I knew to be a wife, right? I knew the connection. I knew what God called for, but I did not know how to detach some of the things or a lot of the things from just dating someone. So that was a big mistake of mine, and I had to grow through that. I had to learn through that, right? But I couldn't do that until I began to live through it. I was existing even in that relationship. So, with all of that I just said, did you experience the existing portion after getting divorced, or did you just jump right into living?
Well, I think there's twofold. I think there's parts of your life that you are actually living, and there's other parts that you're existing. You can be existing emotionally and living in other aspects of your life. So I'm pretty sure there was layers or sections of me that was just existing.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I would agree with that because um, as I as I can recall, there were times I did the work as a mother, right? To heal
Mhm.
as a divorced woman, but a mother. I knew that I had to get it together. I knew that there were layers of hurt, pain, disgust, all of that that needed to be removed because I had to be the best version of myself to my daughters. So I healed in those areas because I practiced it every day,
Mhm.
but I wasn't healing in other areas because I did not. I all I did was give myself permission for people to pat me on the back and say that a boy, good job. I see you look amazing, and that's what I needed at the time. But again, it wasn't until I learned, you know what, Tam, you're hiding behind the stuff. You're hiding behind titles. You're hiding behind the friends. You're hiding behind clothes, hair, all of the things, the workout, people, the compliments. I share often that I wanted to lock arms with men with the life after divorce, and God was like, no. For a few years, he said no, and when he finally gave me the yes, he also he also told me why he was saying no, and that was because I wasn't healed enough, and I was still looking for validation from men. So I wasn't looking for validation from women; it was men because I needed to hear from a man that something like, oh, your husband was tripping. Oh, you are an amazing woman. I needed all of those compliments from a man because I needed to know it was not my fault, right? I hadn't given myself permission to say, but what did you do? Like, but was there anything in the 20 years that you could have done better, different, or not at all that may have added to whatever his feelings or thoughts were, right?
Mhm.
So when you say layers, when you talk about the layers of existing and living in your life, is there any specifics thing that you can talk about after being divorced that you just existed in, and then what was the aha moment? Like, wow, I am just existing and not living.
Great question. My dynamic was a little different, and I might go down a rabbit hole here, but I think we'll get to it. My dynamic was a little different. Most times when, and I'm speaking generally, when people talk about healing after divorce, they're referring to, in most cases, we feel like divorce is the result of wrongdoing. Something has went wrong in a relationship. Somebody has been wronged, or something has went wrong. So there's a level of pain associated with the separation, right? We don't really look at divorce in situations where you got two people who are absolutely okay and they just amicably decide to divorce because they've just grown in separate directions. We always look at it as a standpoint somebody's been wronged. So when we talk about healing, we're normally advocating for the person who has been wronged. In my case, I was the wrongdoer, right? And I was the monster. So the first part of healing is to acknowledge that nobody gives a damn about my healing as the
Mm,
monster. You know what I mean?
so true.
As there's bad people who do bad things, and when those bad people do bad things, they bask in the destruction of what they do. If I'm a bad person and I'm an arsonist, I'm gonna burn a building down and go across the street and just absolutely bask in what I did, right? But then you have good people who are doing bad things. I'm a good person, I have a moral posture, but there's just this compulsion for this, and I can't, you know what I mean? And when
Yeah.
that person does a bad thing, there's conviction associated with that behavior. And at some point, the conviction starts to outweigh the desire for that thing, right?
Mm,
So because there's conviction, once I was divorced, just seeing the long term effects on the person who I divorced didn't allow me to heal. I didn't feel like I had permission to. What gives me the right to be happy when the person that I destroyed can't move forward, right? So my happiness was dependent on their healing rate. So the first thing that I had to do was I had to give myself permission to detach from that and and be okay, knowing that I'm doing things different right now, right? So there were moments when you talk about existing versus just surviving. There were moments where emotionally I was just existing, right? I know what guilt feels like because I've done things that warranted guilt. So I know what it feels like to wake up in the morning uneasy, and I know what that uneasiness is. So there was a long period of time where I would feel that guilt emotionally. I was detached from situations because I felt like I needed to protect people from who I was, right? Um, so it was emotionally, I think, is where I was existing, and other aspects I was actually living. I was still going out. I was still being an artist. I was still going out and I was still advocating for abuse reduction and all those type of things. But at some points emotionally, I was just existing. And to echo what you said about you don't know whether or not you're healed until you're in a situation to test that healing. I was in a relationship from the time I was 16 until I was 39. That was the marriage. I'm 44 now. So only 5 years of my adult life have I been outside of the umbrella of a relationship. So after that relationship ended, I started another relationship a couple years later. And I remember when I was in a relationship, my indiscrepancies was infidelity. It was cheating. You know what I mean? I was never verbally abusive, never physically abusive. We never really had arguments or nothing like that. I was great in my household, but I was great in everybody else's household too. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And at some point, those things create insecurities. But I remember being it's back when Blackberries was relevant. I'd be on my phone texting and doing stuff on the phone. As soon as she walked past me, I put the phone down, face down. If I go to the bathroom, I'm gonna take the phone with me. All these things. So now it's years later, and I'm in a relationship with a person, and I look across the room, and she's on her phone. These are smartphones now, so it's a million things you can do on a smartphone. You could be on a smartphone for hours and never communicate with a person, right? But I felt this absolutely discomfort because she looked just like me.
Yeah.
So now I had to ask myself, is this my gut? Do I have justification to think, or is it my guilt?
Mm.
And what I learned during that moment is I had an insecurity of guilt. Anybody who looked something like me, I had an insecurity where I wasn't going to feel safe. I was going to feel like what I did was happening to me. And I had to figure out where to address that. Is it
Yeah.
fair for me to stop this person from doing what they're doing so they can pave the way for my insecurity to have a safe place to live? Or do I need to address it within me? So those were some of the things that I went through. Being able to, or figuring out how to heal as the monster, I think is a whole different dynamic
That's
from figuring
good.
out how to heal as the person. There's no support system when you're healing as the monster. You know what I mean? There's a support system when you're healing as the person who has been done wrong. So that was the standpoint that I was operating from.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. And I've never heard anyone put it that way, that healing, I was healing as the monster. I was heal. That is you taking ownership of what it is that you did in so many words, in essence. But as you said, you didn't know if you could even give yourself, or you didn't give yourself initially permission to heal. Who am I to go off and heal while the dynamics of this individual's life has just changed for the worse as a result of a decision that I made, right? Yes, it may be easy for me to just move on and go and do what I need to do, but because I am a good person that made some bad decisions, I have a heart that looks at this person and says, wow, I don't want to see you experience that brokenness, right? Because what happens is if she doesn't get the proper help, if she doesn't heal properly, what happens is that actually rolls over into other relationships, and not even necessarily romantic relationships, but just relationships in general. That becomes a trust issue, right? That becomes a issue where you may question yourself, where now you're asking yourself, did I do something to warrant this, right? And if the person across from you isn't willing to say pretty much what you just shared right now, I was the monster. It was me. If they aren't willing to share that, then how does the other person heal through what they have experienced from, the person who did them wrong? So in that, uh, understanding or admitting that you were the person, you were the wrongdoer. What was your process? Because there's somebody that's going to hear this that haven't had language to give what it is that they're doing that you did. What
Yeah,
was your process of healing through that so that you could not, so that you can live forward, right?
yeah.
Because if you're too busy looking over at the person that you hurt, there's no way that you can move forward. So what did you do? What was your process? Did you go to any counseling? Did you talk to her? Like, what happened in your healing process?
That's a great question. It's an ongoing process because when you are the, I'll keep using the word monster, you have to live you have to figure out how to heal in the midst of the destruction, right? If I was, let's use the arson scenario again. I was an arson, so I burned a building down, right? And that building that I burnt down was my workplace. But every day I still got to go to work in that area, and I got to see that building that I burned down. So it's a constant reminder of my destruction, right? So I got to now see that my daughter is not in a two-parent household. Me and her mother are great friends. So even when I talk to her, we're gonna be friends forever. We would be together since I was 16. As far as I'm concerned, she's family. You know what I mean? But I can still, but it may be times where I talk to her where I can still hear some of the aftermath of what I did. So I'm living in the midst of the destruction that I created, and you got to heal within that. I can't remove myself.
Yeah.
Right. So the reality about anyone who's healing is there's a level of acceptance that has to be had. Right. You have to sit back and say, am I going to continue to hold myself liable for a point in time where I was lesser as a person? Yeah. Or am I going to praise myself and reward myself for taking those necessary steps to make the adjustment? So when I was able to honestly conduct a self-assessment, identify the ways that I negatively contributed to a situation, be intentional about fixing those things, move forward in other situations, whether they're romantic situations or not. And now I'm living as the evidence that I'm not that person before. I'm not, I'm being honest. I'm being straightforward in all situations. So now I'm living as the refined self. Am I going to celebrate that? I'm going to continue to punish myself for something that I can't fix. And the acceptance is that this damage is irreparable. But I'm 40 years old. I got 40 more years to live. So am I going to bask in what's in it, or am I going to celebrate myself for the adjustments I made and then give my self permission? So it was me just acknowledging that that was that person. And then this is this person. Yeah. So let me give myself the right to celebrate the work that I've put in order to change those things. You know what I mean? Yeah. So every time I hold a conversation with someone and I tell the truth in a situation where I would have lied, I can say 10 years ago, I would have, you know what I mean? So yeah. There's just ways to reward myself every day throughout life. I can identify the changes in my behavior. And every time I see something that I'm doing better, I can clap for myself. And at some point you start getting those personal round of applause and you start to heal. Right. You were talking about getting validation from men and why God wouldn't allow you to work with men, because and I think we all go through that where we want someone else to reassure us. But I feel like the downside that we experience is we're only as good as the last statement. So that person can tell me or can tell you your husband was tripping, and then you're great now. But then the next day, somebody can say, I understand exactly what your husband was talking about. And now you're back down. So you're dependent. You're only as good as the last statement until we become our own form of validation. And once I become my form of validation, then anything else anybody else says is immaterial. Yeah. So I was able to become my own validator, and I didn't need anybody else to proctor my test. Then, things got better.
That's good. Yeah, it takes time and definitely take a lot of work to become your own validator. And until then, like you said, the only way that you can gauge that is how does what he said or she said, how does that make you feel? Did it make you feel anything different than what you felt when you got up this morning and you affirmed yourself, or you attempted to affirm yourself, or you just looked at yourself? Did you feel any better than you did then, or did you feel worse, right? So we can, as in the space that I'm in right now, I get both. I hear men and women say some great things about me, but I've also heard some things that are not so great. But it's what I believe about myself, what I know for myself. It doesn't matter what they're saying. However, what I will say is, in my growth, I've learned that it's still very important to have a mirror, that when someone shares something with you about you, you can consider it. You don't sign off on it. You can consider it, to take note, to see if this thing that is being pointed out, or especially if it's multiple people saying the same thing. I think it's very important for us to do self-evaluation, right? I'm not saying get stuck in that place. I'm not even saying, say, yes, okay, you're right, because I've heard it more than once. I'm not saying that. But I think if you are, for me, I want to continue to be the better version of myself. I never want to be the best version of myself. And I say that because I think when we are the best, that means there is no better, right? So I am the better version of myself today than I was yesterday or last week or last year. Tomorrow, I hope to be a better version of myself than I am today. Why? Because I am intentionally doing the work. I am saying many times, okay, this is my location. This town, this is where you at. You messed up or you did great or whatever it is. This is your location and this is where you're trying to go. How do you get there? Oftentimes we don't know how to get there. We don't know how to get to the healing. We don't know how to get to the forgiving of ourselves, right? But what happens is every day you just put one foot forward. That's it. And if that's the wrong thing you stepped on, then step to the side. I'm not even going to say step back. I'm going to say step over, right? Don't step back. Just step over. If you stepped on the wrong thing, if you stepped on, it's process of elimination. That didn't work. Try something else. But I think what happens when we are not healed, we beat ourselves up. We allow other people to beat us up. And there's this form of self-doubt, self-hatred. There's so many things that begins to take root and grow within us. So one thing that I've learned in the divorce process is that planting a seed and allowing someone to water it is where growth is going to grow. So I have had seeds planted in me from people that I liked, I did not like, when I was insecure, when I was secure. I've had seeds planted in me and I began to water them. How? By the things I listen to, by the books that I read, by the company that I keep, right? All of those things were watering. And then I began to see growth. I began to see these plants grow, right? And some are good, some are not good. So I got to begin to pluck. The word says, let the wheat and tares grow together. And when he will do the plucking. So I had to learn how to do that for myself. I couldn't just allow people to water or even to plant seeds in me that did not belong on this soil. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Yeah, it's like eat meat and spit bones, right? That makes sense. You get a surplus of information and you take in what you need and you just do away with the rest. And for a long time, that was hard for me. Like for a long time, I didn't start reading books until I was 37 years old because I was too impressionable. I would read a book, and as long as what the book said made sense, I would adopt that behavior into my life, right? I didn't have the ability to look at a book and says, this is all good information, but only this portion of it is good for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was too impressionable. And I think when we leave relationships, a lot of times, depending on why you left the relationship, that vulnerability or the level of brokenness can make us impressionable. Where we start to resort to a lot of answers that might not be our answers. So I think a large part of healing is isolation. I think there's times where I'll talk to myself out loud and I'll play both sides of the conversation. And the part of the conversation that's talking to me will say something that's very profound. And it's never a thought that I've explored before. It's never an opinion that I've had. It's never a perspective that I had. It's just a piece of information that really sounds like it was foreign. But I said it to myself. So I think there's an abundance of information inside of us.
Yeah.
But when we surround ourselves with a whole bunch of outside noise, we never give those voices an opportunity to speak. And I think one of the natural tendencies of divorce is to go surround ourselves with things because we're lonely now. And then the isolation part never gets a chance to fix us, right? So I think a large part of healing is not being afraid of isolation because that's when we're going to hear the answers that are relevant to us.
Yeah.
Other than that, we'll see a situation that looks good, and now everything that they says sounds good because the situation looks like it's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said it earlier, but like I always say, everything we need is in us or right at our fingertips. So oftentimes we don't want to hear, as you said, we don't want to hear what's in us, right? We don't want to get quiet enough to hear that small, still voice because it may be the right thing to do. And not even that, because it may just be the truth, right? We don't want to hear the truth. So we will surround ourselves with noise. We will surround ourselves with the stuff that we are accustomed to doing. One thing that I do know for a fact is that when we are familiar with something, whether it's good or bad, right, we will allow ourselves to continue to be amongst those things. And familiarity does not make it right. And as you said, we have to separate ourselves or isolate ourselves, right? Isolate for a time. Isolate yourself for a time, not to a place where you're falling or slipping into depression, but just enough so you can hear, right? Because if I am always out, if I'm always, hanging out with the girls or, going to parties and clubs or whatever it is that I may do, I don't give myself an opportunity to truly heal. I keep that wound open, and when I come in, I want to. It's a form of numbing, right? If that makes sense. It's a form of just numbing what I truly need to face. And in order for me to heal or us to heal from those things, we have to face it. We have to sit still. We have to give it an opportunity to really just take place. Like, think about what happened. Think about why it happened, right? Have the conversation, like you said, with yourself. Pray, write, journal. One big thing for me was journaling, right? I got it out. I was able to write my feelings, put them on paper. My second book, it was my journal entries. But what I did with those journal entries, every couple of weeks after writing them, I'd go back and I'd read it, right? And I'd ask God to respond to that, or I'd see if I felt any different, and then I'd write that response down. I think we don't do that enough. We don't get it out. We don't let it be known to ourselves. Write the vision and make it plain so he that reads it will have something to run with, right? You're the first one to read it. Write it out for yourself. Make it plain for yourself. Understand it for yourself, not for anyone else. That's secondary. And I think we don't do that enough in our healing process.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You make some great points. I think in order for us to even get to that point, you talked about how people are reluctant to sit with themselves because they may be fearful of hearing the truth. They may be fearful of hearing an answer that doesn't align with what they want to do, right? I heard you say that. And I think there's a surplus of reasons why people are reluctant to sit with themselves, depending on what was the nature of their relationship. If I was in a relationship and there was verbal abuse, if there was debasing, if there was tearing down, and I was always told I was stupid, I was always told I was dumb, I was always told I was ignorant, I was always gaslighted to believe that whatever I say is wrong, then I'm not going to have no confidence in any voice that comes out of my body. So until I'm able to detach from that psychological stronghold of what I was called, then anything that I say is stupid and it's ignorant and it's dumb because I've allowed myself to believe. So I think the first thing is just reestablishing personal confidence that there is something that can come out of me that makes sense for those people who have lost that or surrendered it to whoever that abuser was. So I think that's very important before someone can sit with themselves and listen to themselves. They have to have the confidence that what's being said from themselves is valid and it's not stupid, dumb, or whatever it is they have been called in the past.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I thank you for that, because my next thing that I was going to ask you to do is to share. If you were speaking to, if you had to share something with a group of men or women that is going through divorce and challenged with being their authentic self in this challenging time, and or being who others want them to be, how would you encourage them in words?
Great question. Question I've never thought about. So I'm gonna answer you now, and if you ask me tomorrow, I may have a different answer for you. Right.
Mhm.
First, I would encourage them to understand that there's no blanket answer for healing. Right. Um, if you have a physical ailment and I have a physical ailment and that person has a physical ailment and all our physical ailments are different, somebody just can't give us one way for us all to heal because our ailments are different. And everybody's ailment is different depending on the reason why that relationship ended. So I would first encourage them to understand that there's no blanket answer. So don't look for a blanket answer. I would also encourage them to understand that some things just don't have an answer. There's a lot of times where we ask why, and we're searching for an answer that doesn't exist. So until we find it, we don't give ourselves permission to heal. If that's the case, we're never going to heal. So everything doesn't have an answer. And I would encourage them to also understand that healing is largely about acceptance, accepting that there's some things that went on that I absolutely can't change, but I can change how they take place moving moving forward. So off the top of my head, I think that those are the things that I would. Oh, I would also. There's a lot of. I keep going back to debasing. I see a lot of it as an advocate for abuse reduction. I see a lot of psychological abuse. So I see a lot of people who are torn down to be made to feel like they're less, so that they grow dependent on the abuser, right? And once that emotional trauma bond breaks, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's just a trauma bind, they find their way out of that relationship. And now the hardest part of their healing is to reestablish whatever confidence is taken from them. So I would also encourage, I want to put this in a way that is okay. My father stayed with me, and me and my father have contrasting character traits. So it wasn't going to work. One thing about my father, he talks a lot. He will talk his teeth loose. And me, my peace of mind is based on solitude. I'm a thinker. I need to be able to think. I can't have all my thoughts confiscated by somebody else's voice. It will make a 2,000 square feet house feel like it's only a broom closet. The whole house shrinks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's time for me to tell my father why I need him to leave, right? And I can tell my father, I can say, hey, you talk too much. And it's going to crush him to hear that from someone who he loves. So what he's going to do is suppress himself, and he's going to go in other places and make himself small so that he doesn't give anybody else an opportunity to tell him he talks too much. Or I can go to my father and I can just talk to him about my feelings rather than throwing um, what's the word I'm looking for? A deteriorating character trait on him. I can just say, Daddy, based on my history, based on things that I've been through, it's very, very hard for me to engage in constant conversation. It doesn't allow me to function mentally. Then you know what he's going to say? He's going to say, oh, okay, you're the one with the problem. Then he's going to go somewhere else and he's going to keep talking. In a lot of relationships, instead of just talking about what we feel, we name the person's character trait as something that's unbecoming. And then they
Mm.
hold on to that. So I think when someone's healing, they have to realize that that thing that other person said about me, that thing might not have been okay with them, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. So let me give myself permission to still exist in that thing if it's something that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talk a whole lot. My significant other didn't like that. That was one of the reasons why they always said whatever to me. So now let me give myself permission to know that it is okay to talk. It just doesn't align with them. But there's plenty of people here waiting to hear my voice. So I would give them permission to do that, to detach from those labels that's been put on them and give themselves permission to be who they are, despite how ugly who they are was called by that previous person. Very long-winded explanation, but I hope it.
That's okay. It made sense, and I jotted down some notes. So you said there is no blanket answer. Second, you said some things have no answer. Some things there's just no answer for. The third thing you said is that healing is about acceptance. So you have to accept your location before you can begin to move forward. And then the last thing you spoke about is reestablishing your own confidence. So regardless to what the other person said to you or at you or about you, it's almost like removing that defined layer off of you and continuing to be that thing. Like they put it on you as a negative, but
Right.
that's just who you are. And as you said, it may not be in alignment with you, but this is who I am. So I'm not going to not be who I am because it doesn't align with who you are or who you would like for me to be. Those are
Absolutely.
those are really good. Those are really good tips to leave with someone. I'm actually going to and I'll give you your props. I'm actually going to use them. I'll give you your props, but I definitely wanted you to leave the people who are either here or that will come back to listen to this something. I appreciate you. Again, I appreciate your yes. I know this was kind of like, let's just hop on. Let's do this real quick, or let's have this conversation. But I thank you. I thank you for giving us the time and your heart and your mind and all that you shared tonight. You said some great things. And I think that will be very helpful for anyone that listen, and even for me, because as you said earlier, and I agree with you 1000%, is that you never reach healing, right? You never reach healed, right? Healing is just an ongoing process. And so what happens is when you get to a point, like you said, clap it up for yourself, right? And keep moving. So if there's ever a point where you say, well, I am completely healed, then all right, you're completely healed. But what is it that you're doing to maintain your healing? What's the maintenance package, right? So I would leave it like that. So again, I say thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we hop off of here?
Yeah, two things. I would be remiss if I didn't say it. One thing is, I think it's very important for people to understand that healing is self-imposed, it's self-administered. There's assistance that we can get from, for instance, I spent a lot of time in therapy. I spent 21 years in the military, and I've seen a lot of things while in the military. So I spent a lot of time in therapy, and therapy didn't fix me. What therapy did, it explained to me why I was the way I was, which in turn gave me the language to explain to people who I care about why I'm that way, so they don't take me personal. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think therapy can give you information about why you are a way, but the actual healing is self-administered. So people who are looking for healing by going to their five best friends and wanting their five best friends to that validation, I think is very important to understand that that's not the way to go by doing it. And a lot of times what we'll do out of a lack of trust for ourselves is, I've been knowing myself for 44 years, and we'll find somebody who met us yesterday and ask them a question about ourselves and then trust their opinion about what they said about me. And they've been knowing me for less than 24 hours, but we have more confidence in what comes from elsewhere. So that's one thing. Understand that healing is self-administration. We can reach out for assistance, but ultimately, the other thing is, we talk a lot about healing and the person's responsibility as the healer. But I didn't say much about the ally's responsibility when you're connected to a person who's trying to heal. I think oftentimes we do a lot of, I gave you my best advice and you didn't listen to it. So if you like it, I love it. And then we give up on them.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm.
I've seen situations where someone was in a trauma bond. They were attached. They had a bond to the person who was the cause of their trauma. They absolutely fell in love with this aspect of them. So they inherited the ugly part because they wanted to hold on to the part that they liked, right? And they had a bond.
Yeah.
And then someone would come and give them all the resources. Hey, listen, there's a place where you can go that's going to give you shelter. There's a place where you can go that's going to give you this. And then I don't care how many resources you give a person. If they are in a trauma bond, they're not going to take the resources. They're still an emotional bond.
Yeah.
At some point, and then the person says, hey, you know what? Well, I gave you all I can. You don't want it. I'm out. And then they give up on them. And then this person gives up on them. And then this person gives up on them. Eventually, that trauma bond, it breaks. And there's no longer a bond. Now there's just a bind. And the bind is physical. The bind is financial abuse. The bind is shelter. And when it's just a physical bind, it's like being physically binded to a chair. I want to get out this chair, but these chains have me binded. But as soon as you cut the chair, chains, I'm out of there. Once the trauma bond becomes a bind, now all they need is answers that they don't have, things that they don't have the answers to, and they'll leave. But all of their support system is gone because you gave up on them during the time that they were in the bond.
Wow.
So I think as allies,
Yeah.
you have to understand the stages of a relationship, the difference between a trauma bond and a trauma bind. Recognize the stage that that person is in, know what they're going to be psychologically capable of in that stage, and just stand by and wait. And just stand by and wait. And then the second they say, I'm ready, now we can say, okay, let's do it. And we can, but if we disappear during the time that they're not listening to us, now when they are ready, there's no one to help them. So we have a huge responsibility as allies as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And that actually helps me to continue to say what it is that I usually say about those who have never been divorced, those who may have never even been married. And I'm asking you to support my mission or my vision, or I'm asking you to, come to the gala, come to the meet and greet, come to our conference, right? And there's people who are like, I've never been divorced. But the support, the allies, people that I see that has not gone through it, yet they want to support me however they can, whatever that looks like. Like you said, every illness, everything is going to be different for everyone. So I may need you to just listen to me when I get to a point where I'm ready to talk. And then I may need you to, I don't know, take a trip with me. whatever that is, something completely different. However, as a support system, I am personally asking those of you who are listening, don't give up on your friends. Don't give up on those who are going through. Put yourself in position to think about something that you have experienced and you just wasn't ready to heal through it. You didn't know how to. Oftentimes, we just don't know how to. Even if I am standing in front of you and I'm giving you permission, just pour. Obbie, just pour. You just give me everything. Just let me have it. If I have not been given permission to trust someone to share my heart with, I don't know what that looks like. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I give it to you, you're going to turn around and do the same thing that landed me here. So I don't know how to do that. And I ask you to just be patient with me. So patience looks like this. There's a young lady that I reached out to on social media because she posted that she was giving up on some things as it relates to her relationship. She was embarrassed because I just went through a divorce and oh my God, got into this next relationship and I'm just done. I'm over it. So I reached out to her. She didn't respond to me immediately. Maybe about 5 days later, she sent me a text. Thanks, appreciate it. 2 days later, hey, just want you to know you're on my mind, praying for you. Just small little things, not every day, not overwhelming, but just a reminder that when you are ready, I'm here. Month later, she sends me a message and she says, you have no clue how powerful that was to just know you were every blue moon reaching out to me, letting me know that you were there. I'm ready. And she began to share. And she began to say things that she probably had been holding in. Never met the lady. She doesn't even live here in California. But that's what being patient, being a supporter, locking on, that's what it looks like in action. Because we can say, I got you, sis. I got you, bro. We can say it until we don't, right? Until, okay, I'm giving up. So don't be so quick to wash your hands on people. I thank you for sharing that, Obbie. That really made a lot of sense.
Now I got two more things if I have time.
Go ahead.
And this is not to compete with you for profound points. It's just to expound so that I may say one thing a certain way, you may say it a different way, and we may have two different audiences that understand. So I remember one time I had, and this is going to seem like it's way off the beaten path, but it's relatable. I remember a time where I had a car and my car was in the shop. And while my car was in the shop, I was going crazy. I was losing my mind because I was at home and I didn't have no way to get anywhere, right? And I couldn't, no peace of mind. And then I got my car out the shop and the car was in the driveway and I had nowhere to go. But I just felt absolutely great just because the car was out there in case I needed it. And that's how we are as people. Some people might not even use us, but just knowing that we're there if they need us, it gives them a peace of mind. I have a therapist right now. I ain't talked to her in over a year, but I know that she's assigned to me. If VA called me tomorrow and said she's no longer assigned to me, I'll probably have an anxiety attack. And I ain't talked to her in a year. So just knowing that someone is assigned to you can lend a peace of mind, an extraordinary level of peace. And another thing is you talked about people who are reluctant to attend your conferences because they've never been divorced. But when we talk about healing, healing is normally a response to pain. Healing is a response to trauma. And marriage isn't the only relationship that causes pain, that causes trauma. You can divorce from a professional relationship, a work relationship. You can divorce from childhood abuse. You can divorce from a whole bunch of different type of relationships aside from marriage. So I would ask them that when you hear the word divorce, to broaden your thinking and don't look at it as it means you have to have been in a marriage in order for this information to be relevant. Some of the information that you need to heal from a marital divorce is probably some of the same information you need to heal from an abusive business relationship and all those things. So that's all I have. I promise.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, I thank you for coming on the platform. I got to get you in the building soon, one day. I got to get on your calendar and you on mine so that we can actually lock arms with this thing. I think we have a lot in common as it relates to our thought process with certain things. We spoke for a length of time at the wedding anniversary, and so hence we're here today. So I thank you once again. Let the people know how they can find you, any social media links or anything. How can they find you?
Yeah, it's Obbie West on everything. OBBIE West, 2 words. Obbie, Obbie, and then West, West. So it's Obbie West on IG. My email is www.obbiewest.com. Christian Mingle, OnlyFans. No, I'm kidding.
What?
I'm
I'm
kidding.
like, wait, what?
But yes, it's Obbie West on everything. LinkedIn is Obbie West. Primary mediums that I use or platforms that I use to share work is IG. I have information on the website for advocacy presentations. If you go to obbiewest.com, there's a button that says advocacy. That's going to take you to spokenadvocacy.com, and there's a list of presentations I offer. So Obbie West, everything.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We will be in touch. I will be calling you. We'll be talking. I hope you guys enjoyed everything that was shared on tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll get them to him and he can respond. Or if it's for me, I can respond. But I would love for you to join us for our conference and our gala in November 7th and November 8th. You guys you can go to my IG page. It's _life after divorce _ all of the information will be there in my bio. You can click on it and all the links will take you directly to whatever it is that you need to know about what's going to happen on that weekend. But I'd love for you to just come and be my guest. Come on, you guys. So thank you once again, Obbie. I'll be calling you. I'll be talking to you. You guys have an amazing one. Please share, like, and share. And we'll be seeing you soon. Bye.